4:07. Now, the former head, the president of the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists, an eminent, noted psychiatrist, Associate Professor Jonathan Phillips, has recently met with, is the word that I'll use, he may give us the medical terms, Schapelle Corby, and he's on the telephone. Professor, g'day.
Good afternoon.
How did you come to be engaged to go and and speak with Schapelle?
Came out of the blue. I was contacted by the Corby family and asked whether I could take on the task. I was fairly reluctant at first, but I did go up to Bali for a very quick 2-day visit and spent the whole of it working on the Corby case.
So it was a consultation, is that the right word?
Absolutely.
A clinical?
Yes, it was a medical consultation.
Right.
It was, as I would have done in Sydney or anywhere else, It was looking at her medical state at the moment. Her medical needs had nothing to do with what she's in prison for.
And we've established your credentials, an eminent psychiatrist. What did you find?
Well, I was quite shocked by what I found. Schapelle was very depressed and had been for approximately 15 months. And on top of that had become psychotic. And when I use that word, I'm talking about a break from the reality that we all share with the development of delusions, hallucinations, paranoid ideas, fragmentation of thought, and some catatonic stuff where she would withdraw into her own world and fail to communicate with others.
Is she aware of her surroundings? Does she know?
Yes. She's aware that she knows she's in jail. She knows the length of the sentence. She's well aware of the pressures that exist in the jail. It's not as if she is completely removed from the rest of us, but she has a very disturbed mind state at the present time.
In the hierarchy of psychiatric conditions, the word psychotic to a layman carries a hell of a lot of, it's laden with meaning. What does it mean to a psychiatrist?
Well, it is laden with meaning, I agree with you, because it's where a person moves from the normal world, which I said we share, which we understand, to a world which is bizarre and frightening and has very little connection with the old normal world. And it's a completely different and much more severe state of disintegration of the mind, if you like.
Doctor, I would imagine that you've met with unwell people and possibly people who have tried to put one over medical people, to say they're ill when they're not. What's your assessment of the possibility that she was, swinging the lead?
Yeah, look, I was very conscious of this, and I must say I've seen over the years countless prisoners as well as ordinary people, and I approach the clinical task with considerable scepticism. So my antennae are up from the beginning. I don't believe that she's putting this on. In fact, the presentation is so complex and bizarre that you would need to be a genius in deception to pull this one off. I think, to the very best of my ability, there's every chance that this is the reality of the situation.
And if that is the case, she's delusional, she's very depressed, psychotic. What is the medical prognosis for her? What will it lead to?
Well, she can't get better in the prison. I think we all know that prisons are about the worst place to treat psychiatric illness that one could think of. So she's not going to get better there, she's going to get worse there, and with that comes a whole stack of risks. On the other hand, if she's put into a hospital environment, secure hospital environment, either in Bali or in Australia, then and she's properly treated, and that means a safe environment, proper medication, proper counselling, and so on, I would anticipate a slow, maybe even a very slow recovery.
What would recovery mean?
In its best sense, recovery means going back to where she was. The amount of, the degree of mental disintegration at the moment makes me pretty pessimistic that she could go back to where she was, but she should be a lot better than she is now.
Were you able to discern any, impact or influence on her psyche as a result of illicit drug use? Did you form a view about that?
Illicit drug use, and I think probably we're talking cannabis might have been a thing of the past, and there's no doubt that some people undergo quite remarkable downhill road when they're smoking a lot of cannabis, and can indeed become psychotic. But that process is while they smoke or very shortly after stopping the agent. Let us assume that she's not having drugs in the prison, then there'd be no connection between her current state and any past use of drugs.
Are we able to make that assumption, do you think?
Well, I said let us make it. I mean,
right.
I'm a realist when it comes to prisons. My inquiries would suggest that it's unlikely that there's a serious drug problem in that prison, particularly given that it's Indonesia and prisons are strange places, and one could never categorically rule that out. But there was nothing else to suggest to me that she's currently using drugs.
And do you think it's possible that she could recover fully in an Indonesian hospital facility compared to one here in Australia?
Very difficult question. The problem there is the vastly different culture and the language difficulties.
Yeah.
Certainly it would be a very much better environment than the prison. And there is possibly one hospital in Bali which has a secure area which could fit the bill. But if we're really talking recovery, it would be much smarter and more humane to bring her back to Australia, if that is possible, and treat her in a Justice Health Hospital in this country, and then serve the balance of sentence here.
Well, Professor, I had a little bit of exposure to the criminal justice system as a young copper early in my time. You sound to me like a very balanced and reasoned observer, a realist who you exude experience of dealing with recidivists, dealing with criminals and people suffering psychosis. A lot of people would be listening to you to hear from you as to what you think should be the next step for Schapelle Corby.
Yes, well, I think it's if all are willing, I think it would be sensible to try to negotiate to have her moved on health grounds alone, and I stress that. I'm not entering the debate of any other debate in the legal area. To move her on health grounds alone to an Australian Justice Health Hospital and treat her here.
Professor, it's very kind of you to give us so much time this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Associate Professor Jonathan Phillips, who used to head up the College of Psychiatrists in Australia and New Zealand. And you'll have a view about Schapelle. I must say, listening to that, it does sound that it's cruel punishment to maintain her in that cell over there, particularly if, as the professor said, the prognosis is continued downward spiral into depression and the psychosis associated with it. It sounds pretty much like a very unpleasant death sentence. And if there is a mechanism through which she could be allowed to serve the rest of her time here, I can't see any reason why she ought not. But you'll have a view. What do you think? Give us a ring. 13 13 32.